Today's video is going to give you some tips on how to get rid of squirrels out of your attic, how to keep them out of your chicken coop or your bird feeder, or how to make stew out of them. Hey y'all, it's Kathleen Mooney with EIEIOs in Wimberley again. Time for Tuesday Tips from the Farm. Today we're going to be talking about one of my least favorite creatures on earth, squirrels. Years before I was a farm girl, I had a bed and breakfast in Austin. It was very elegant. Down the hill from the main house, I had a precious little garden. Well, one day I noticed I had the most gorgeous, probably award-winning tomato. As I'm trotting down to the garden, I see a squirrel. It's looking straight at the same tomato I'm looking at. And I was like, oh, no, you don't, you little mofo. And I started racing down the hill to that tomato. Well, the squirrel started racing towards the same tomato, and he got there first. So I started chasing him, and I was like, you little jerk. He scrambled up into a tree, and I stood under that tree going, you little a-hole, I want my tomato back. You know what happened next? He threw the tomato down, and it knocked me in the shoulder. I couldn't even believe it. I kind of walked back up to the bed and breakfast, sort of stunned and freaked out all at the same time. For all you animal activists, this video just might not be for you. But everybody else, think about it. Back in March and April, and HEB ran out of meat. Squirrel meat is one of the most sustainable meats on earth, and it has lots and lots of protein. Squirrels do a lot of damage. Today's video is going to give you some tips on how to get rid of squirrels or how to make stew out of them. Chef Gordon Ramsay even does delectable, wonderful gourmet dishes with squirrels. Look, there's one of those mofos right now. You know, when I very first bought the farm, I went to Half Price Books and I found a book called Outwitting Squirrels. It was a paperback and it was about that thick. And I bought it, just figuring I have 73 pecan trees. I've got a million more times that of squirrels, and I needed that big fat book to help me with my squirrel dilemma. You can try to catch them in cages. It's very rare that people are successful, but last night I set out a cage on the one pecan tree we have left with any pecans on it, and look, I got him. The little sure looks cute in there, doesn't he? Hey, little fella, I know there's plenty of people in Wimberley that know just how to cook ya. You know, I've read that anytime you're going to use rabbit in a recipe, you can substitute squirrel. There's squirrel stews. There's a squirrel cordon bleu. You can have grilled squirrel. You can have hobo stew. Now, southern fried squirrel is really big over in Louisiana. You know, I have a niece, Carolyn, and she's Carolina Verbena on Instagram, thousands of followers. She's a cocktail connoisseur, and she came up with a cocktail called Squirrel's Delight. Very nutty flavor, and I'm telling you what, if I put one of her cocktails out on the lawn, I bet you the squirrels would go after it and be keeling over. I know if I drank one, I'd keel right over. So many of us enjoy watching birds eating out of bird feeders, but who comes along? Squirrels. So a couple tips are you can put WD-40 on the top of the bird feeder, but it makes it so slippery the squirrels can't balance on top. Number two, you can put Vaseline or vegetable oil or anything like that up and down the post, the shepherd's hook that comes up to the bird feeder, and the squirrels will just start slipping and sliding up and down there, and they oftentimes are not able to get to the seeds. Right up there. See the little thing that looks like a washboard up at top with the EIEIO? I see squirrels going in and out of those slats all day long. Or I used to. Look at that! A bunch of pecan shells. Oh my God, if I ever needed evidence, there it is right there. Squirrels in the attic are a big, big problem for a lot of people. Ever been sitting in the bathtub and you hear some scurrying around up in the ceiling? It's the most disconcerting sound. I have a couple tips. So I buy in bulk cayenne powder. They hate cayenne powder, so I sprinkle it all over the attic, and they also hate the smell of peppermint or Vicks Vapor Rub. So I put little jars of Vapor Rub with the lid open all around the attic, and I think I've gotten rid of the squirrels up in the attic. This is the very tree that our dog Pax would chase squirrels up, but you know what those little do? and sit right in that landing while Pax, knowing that Pax couldn't reach him, and just sit there and make little taunting noises to him. And it just infuriated him, but he kept trying and trying and trying. And then one time, he got one. And had the squirrel in his mouth. And I looked at him from across the porch and I was like, Pax, kudos, yay! And for weeks on end, he carried that pelt around like it was a big old trophy. Speaking of squirrel dogs, which Pax is not really, there are squirrel dogs that you can buy. They range anywhere from $800 to $1,500. They're called mountain curs. They're perfect squirrel dogs. One of the most interesting things I found about in my squirrel research was that fishermen use squirrel tails for lures. They're called MEP spinners, and you can cut a squirrel tail 2 or 3 times and get several lures out of them. You know, they don't call it squirrel season for nothing. There's bound to be a squirrel season in Texas, but, you know, some people shoot them all year long. Now, in Composting 101, I talked about putting all your coffee grinds in your compost pile. Still a good idea, but you might want to consider every other day broadcasting your coffee grinds across your beautiful lawn. Squirrels do not like the smell or taste of coffee grinds. A lot of times it'll deter the squirrel from digging up holes across your beautiful lawn and planting their stash. A lot of times squirrels like to dig up and plant their stash in flower beds or in gardens. So you can spread your coffee grinds around. You can also plant daffodils. They are poisonous to squirrels, so they won't even touch them. You can also, a lot of people will spray peppermint oil over their flower beds or their gardens, and that deters the squirrels. Last but not least, they don't like to dig through mulch. So the more mulch you put on your flower beds or your garden beds, and probably the thicker it is, they will not mess with your beds, or they say they won't. Moral of the story is, there's plenty more squirrels than there are of us. So if you don't want to have them for dinner, you can try deterring them from your gardens, your trees, your attic, anywhere you don't want them. But I think the bottom line is you need to learn how to live in harmony with them. They are just darling little creatures, even though they're mofos. And I tell you the truth, sometimes when I see a dead squirrel on the road, I'm like, yeah. Hey, snack time, vultures. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week for more Tuesday Tips from the Farm.
Squirrels. All we really are is squirrels. We're being hunted, we are squirrels. We are appealing, we are squirrels. We want to gather nuts, but people splatter our guts when they're on a country drive.